my own wedding, my husband raised his glass, declared he'd loved someone else for 10 years, then walked past me and pulled my sister onto the dance floor. The hall clapped, but then one question from me made him choke and sent my sister crashing to the floor. But what happened next made the whole hall freeze. Before I tell you the full story, do me a small favor. Subscribe, hit like, and comment where you're watching from so this reaches more people. The reception at the Marlowe Grand Pavilion gleamed like an over-polished trophy. Chandeliers glowed honey gold over a sea of silk gowns, tuxedos, and people who pretended they loved each other. The air smelled of money, roses, and lies. I sat at the head table in my flawless white gown trying to steady my breath. My name is Mira Cole. Well, legally, Mira Ward now, and that moment should have been the happiest of my life. Instead, something inside me was already cracking. My husband, Ethan Ward, floated through the room as if he'd lived inside spotlights his entire life. Tall, charming, his smile crisp enough to slice glass, he welcomed every politician, banker, and socialite as if they were guests at his own coronation. He shook hands, kissed cheeks, laughed at everything, and never once looked at me long enough for anyone to call it affection. My father, Harold Cole, sat at the head table like a carved monument, sharp suit, sharp eyes, sharp intentions. He had arranged this marriage with the precision of a man who equated daughters with investment portfolios. He watched Ethan with satisfaction, the satisfaction of a man who believed he had secured both his business and his ego in one flawless transaction. Beside him sat my younger sister, Lila Cole. Where I'd been raised on duty, she'd been raised on adoration. Her wine-red dress clung to her like ambition. She twirled her fork through dessert, bored and electric at the same time, sending flirtatious glances toward Ethan. I'd grown up watching Lila take everything handed to her, but I never imagined she'd take this. The music shifted. The MC announced the groom's speech. Ethan strode to the center of the hall, stood beneath the largest chandelier, and took the microphone. The room quieted as if gravity had increased. "My friends, my family," he said, his voice smooth, warm, rehearsed. "Today I join my life with the Coles, a family I've known and respected for 10 years. 10 years. I blinked hard. That was exactly how long he and I had known each other, since he joined the logistics division straight out of university. But I'd never once sensed any secret, any hidden affection. Our relationship had been pragmatic, entirely orchestrated by my father. A lot has happened in those years, Ethan continued. But one great love has lived in my heart all this time. Gasps drifted through the room like perfume. How romantic, someone murmured. But my pulse began ticking faster. Ethan locked his gaze on the head table, not at me but past me. Right at Lila. "This dance," he declared, "this first dance of my new life, is for the one I have loved in secret for a decade." A ripple of shock moved through the hall. I felt my stomach drop as if the floor had opened beneath my chair. This had to be a joke. A dramatic, poorly timed prank. The orchestra began a slow waltz. Ethan walked toward the table with deliberate slowness. I stood on instinct, thinking he would take my hand in some theatrical twist. He walked right past me. His cologne drifted by like a cold insult. Cameras rose. Murmurs spread. He stopped in front of my sister. Lila didn't look surprised. Not even confused. She smiled, a triumph she didn't bother to conceal. She extended her hand, and Ethan led her to the center of the floor. They began to dance. My world shrank into that single, grotesque image. My husband holding my sister like she belonged to him, guiding her across the polished marble as if I didn't exist. Applause erupted. Actual applause. People whispered, "How sweet! A dance with the maid of honor! What a tradition!" They cheered the performance of my humiliation. My father clapped too. That was the final fracture. I sat back down slowly, the applause dulling to a hollow roar inside my skull. Something cold slid into place inside me, something sharper than heartbreak, deeper than betrayal. Anger? No. It wasn't loud enough to be anger. It was calculation. I set my champagne flute down, lifted another full glass, stood, and walked. Every step shook the room. The train of my wedding dress snagged on chair legs as guests parted around me, watching silently. Ethan and Lila danced their perfect stolen dance. My father looked pleased, utterly blind to the destruction he'd engineered. I reached him just as the music softened. He paused his applause, annoyed that I had broken the illusion. I took a breath. "Father," I said clearly, "since Ethan just confessed his love for Lila, does that mean you're canceling the $750,000 of debt you forced me to marry him to cover?" Silence detonated. The orchestra froze mid-note. A fork clattered. A child whimpered. The hall turned into a vacuum as every pair of eyes fixed on us. Ethan choked. Literally choked. Red in the face, coughing violently. Lila stumbled backward in shock. Her skin drained from rose to chalk. Her knees buckled and she collapsed, lifeless, onto the floor. Screams. Chaos. Chairs overturned. Guests rushed toward her. Paramedics stormed, and minutes later, loading her unconscious body onto a stretcher. Ethan bolted after her. My father turned on me with a rage, so cold it barely needed volume. "You stupid girl," he hissed. "You didn't expose him, you destroyed us." He released my arm with a shove and stormed off after the stretcher. I stood alone in the ruins of my own wedding. Servants began clearing dishes. Guests hurried away. And I realized for the first time that I was no longer a daughter, no longer a wife, no longer anything useful to them. The entire city would know by morning. And this was only the beginning. The Marlowe Pavilion emptied fast. People avoided my eyes as if humiliation were contagious. Servers moved quietly, collecting untouched plates and shattered dignity. My wedding dress, once pristine, now felt like a costume borrowed for a play I had been rudely removed from. I slipped away through a side door, the hall echoing behind me like a tomb. I knew where the family had gone. Every Cole event had a private suite, a hidden room where real conversations happened behind locked doors. I moved down the corridor toward it, dragging the heavy train of my dress. Marcus, the longtime security guard, stepped in front of me. He wouldn't look at me. "Miss Cole, you can't go in." "What do you mean I can't?" My voice was hollow. "My family is inside." He swallowed. "Mr. Cole's orders." The words hit harder than anything my father had said that night. He hadn't even waited for the paramedics to leave. He banished me instantly. I lowered my gaze, nodded stiffly, and turned away. There was nothing left for me in that building. Not love, not respect, not even acknowledgement. Outside, the air smelled of rain and asphalt. I wrapped my coat, a thin rental from the bridal suite, around my shoulders and stepped into the street. A cab pulled over when I raised my hand. "Where to?" the driver asked, peering at me through the rearview mirror. "The Astor Heights complex," I whispered. "Apartment 1203. The apartment Harold had given Ethan and me as a wedding present, our fresh start. The cab rolled through glittering city streets while I stared at my reflection in the window. The raindrops distorted my face, smearing mascara into long, dark trails. I barely recognized myself. When I reached the building, the lobby lights were painfully bright. The concierge smiled politely, but when I tried my key, the lock jammed. I tried again, and again. Nothing. "This key isn't working," I said. The concierge cleared his throat. "Mr. Ward came earlier today. The locks were changed." The world blurred. "Changed?" I repeated. "Yes, ma'am." He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm sorry." I stood there in my soaking gown, hair clinging to my face, staring at a door that no longer belonged to me. My phone rang. My father's name glowed across the screen like a warning. "Mira," he said, voice clipped. "You're not to return to this apartment. Your employment with Cole and Sons Foods is terminated effective immediately. All accounts linked to the company have been frozen." "Father, that is all." He hung up. It was astonishing how efficiently a person could be erased. Less than 4 hours after my wedding, I had no home, no job, no money, and no family willing to claim me. I sank onto the hallway floor. The tiles were cold against my spine. Somewhere above me, the elevator chimed. Life kept going in every direction but mine. After a long time, I forced myself to stand. My dress was heavy with rain, my hair plastered to my neck. Every instinct in me screamed that I could not cry here, not in a place he owned. I walked out of the building onto the street and dialed the only people I thought might still care. Mr. Ruiz, my father's oldest business partner, answered with tension in his voice. "I can't talk, Mira," he said quickly. "Not safe for me." He disconnected before I could speak. Mrs. Bellamy, my late mother's best friend, listened for 5 seconds before the call dropped. When I redialed, I found myself blocked. I was radioactive. Anyone who touched me risked being burned by Harold Cole's fury. The rain had intensified to a cold, needling drizzle. My coat was meaningless against it, but there was one place left, one place I had never been allowed to go. My Aunt Rosa's house. Old, ivy-covered, hidden on the far side of the city. My father's estranged sister. He had forbidden me from visiting her ever. She's poison, he'd insisted. She undermines this family. Forget she exists. He never explained why. Tonight, poison was exactly what I needed. I walked for nearly an hour. Each step sank into puddles. The hem of my dress dragged mud like a defeated flag. Strangers stared at me, some with pity, some with suspicion. A few stepped aside, afraid of whatever story I carried with me. By the time I reached Rosa's overgrown gate, I was shivering uncontrollably. Light glowed in a window. I knocked. The door opened to reveal a tall woman with steel-gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Her face resembled my father's in outline but not in spirit. Her eyes were sharper, wiser alive. She looked at my ruined dress, my smudged makeup, my trembling hands. "No surprise," she murmured. "No pity either." Then, "I've been waiting." The words sent something electric through me. She stepped aside. "Come in before you freeze." Her home smelled like dried herbs and the faint sweetness of old books. Warmth embraced me as she handed me a thick towel and a soft robe. While I changed, she brewed tea. We sat across from one another, steam rising between us. "So," she began, "Harold finally cast you out." It wasn't a question. "He said I ruined the family," I whispered, "because of a debt Ethan owed." Rosa actually laughed, an unexpected, scathing sound. "Oh, Mira, you still think this is about Ethan?" I stared at her. "Isn't it?" "No," she said, leaning forward. "The debt was real. But it wasn't Ethan's." My breath hitched. "Whose?" "Lila's." Everything in my head tilted. "Your sister," Rosa continued calmly. "She's been living above her means for years. Designer trips, high-end clubs, offshore shopping. When the lenders came for her, Harold panicked. Couldn't let his golden child be tainted. So he needed someone else to carry the burden." My heart thudded. But how does Ethan fit? He was convenient, ambitious but financially unstable, perfect for Harold to manipulate. Harold told you Ethan had a $750,000 debt, but Ethan never owed a penny. It was all Lila's. The marriage was a transaction. You were the collateral. Your obedience made you the perfect solution. I stared into my untouched tea. Her words were knives, but they cut with the truth I'd always felt but never dared articulate. "They used you, Mira," Rosa said softly. "All 3 of them." I closed my eyes, swallowing the nausea rising inside me. "What do I do now?" Rosa stood and walked to an old wooden drawer. She returned with a small, tarnished key on a worn string. "This," she said, placing it in my palm, "opens your mother's studio downtown. She kept it secret from Harold, paid for it with her own savings. She left things there. Tools. Answers." My fingers curled around the cold metal. "Your mother knew the truth long before you did," Rosa whispered. "And she left you what you need to survive him." I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room, listening to the wind rattle the old windows. When dawn finally crept in, pale and exhausted, Rosa handed me simple clothes, slacks, a gray sweater, sturdy shoes. "You won't need that dress anymore," she said. I left it folded at the foot of the bed like the ghost of who I'd been before everything cracked open. The studio was 3 bus rides away in an older part of town, quiet, forgotten. A narrow brick building with cracked steps. The key turned with a grating metallic groan, like the place itself was waking after years of silence. Inside, time had stopped. A small living room. Dust on everything. The faint, lingering scent of my mother's perfume, vanilla and something floral. Her calendar on the wall frozen on the date she died 10 years ago. I walked to the writing desk. Opened the drawers. Paper. Pens. Nothing unusual. The bottom drawer was locked. The key Rosa gave me didn't fit. Disappointment choked me, until I noticed the faintest tear on the wall behind the calendar. I lifted it. A tiny key had been taped underneath. My heartbeat sped. The bottom drawer clicked open. Inside was a single thick ledger, dark green cover, worn edges. My mother's handwriting on the first page. Inconsistency log, production bay 3. I flipped through page after page of meticulously recorded defects, spoilage, and disposals. Next to each, the truth she had uncovered. Products logged as ruined were secretly sold, donated, written off. My father's secret empire of falsified generosity. I stared at the book until my eyes burned. This wasn't just corruption. This was the beginning of everything that had destroyed her, and now me. And I knew I couldn't stop here. I needed someone who had seen this from the inside. I needed Calvin Ramos, and finding him would be the spark that lit the rest. I walked out of the studio carrying the ledger wrapped in my coat, its weight far heavier than paper should allow. The buses rattled past as I made my way toward the old bus depot. Calvin Ramos always walked home through there after his shift at Cole & Sons. He was loyal to my mother, respected her deeply, and had been at the factory long before I was born. If anyone would confirm what the ledger implied, it would be him. He arrived exactly on schedule, his shoulders hunched, lunch pail in hand, coat too thin for the cold. He looked older than I remembered, tired, weary, almost hollow. I stepped out from behind a pillar. Calvin! He flinched violently as if seeing a ghost. Mira! His eyes darted around the depot. You shouldn't be here. I need your help, I said, my voice low, steady. It's about my mother. His jaw tightened. Of all names, hers was the one that could still unsteady him. What about her? I opened my bag, just enough for him to see the edge of the green ledger. She wrote this. She documented everything. His face drained of color. Put that away, he whispered harshly. Don't let anyone see you with it. Calvin, please, I insisted. She found out about the disposals, the fake donations, the money. She knew. And she was alone with it. He took a step back, shaking his head violently. I can't be part of this. You can, I said quietly. You know the shipments. You know the schedules. You know the old warehouse routes. I can't, he repeated louder now. Your father, Harold, he promoted me last week. His voice cracked with humiliation. I took your old job. Triple the pay. I couldn't refuse. I have a sick wife, grandchildren. I stared at him, shocked. He bought you. He looked away. He gave me a chance I couldn't afford to reject. You don't understand. I'm sorry, Mira. His eyes pleaded with me to not make him speak another word. Forget whatever that book says. Burn it. Leave the city. Don't fight him. He turned and walked quickly into the crowd, swallowed by commuters and bus exhaust, leaving me standing on the cold concrete, the ledger clutched to my chest. That moment hurt more than the wedding, more than being thrown out, more than being fired. Calvin had been the last thread tying me to the belief that someone inside the factory had decency left. And Harold had cut him away with a promotion. I sat on a bench, numb. Buses came and went. People lived their lives around me, drifting like ghosts. A police officer eventually approached, asking if I was all right. No. But I stood anyway. I'm leaving, I muttered. I walked for miles back to my aunt's house. Rosa opened the door before I could knock. She took one look at me and ushered me inside. What happened? She asked. I told her everything. Calvin's refusal, the promotion, his fear. The way his loyalty had been bought. Rosa didn't flinch. Of course he refused. You expected that? I whispered. Your father's pattern is predictable, she said. He destroys those who oppose him. He rewards those who obey. Calvin is no traitor. He's another victim. But then what am I supposed to do? The words cracked with exhaustion. Without someone from the inside, this ledger means nothing. Rosa crossed her arms, thinking. If you can't enter through the door, Mira, you climb in through a window. I frowned. What window? There is one person in the city who hates Harold Cole more than anyone else alive, she said, and who has nothing left to lose. His name is Andre Thorne. I had heard the name. 5 years earlier, he had been the most respected investigative journalist in the region. Fearless, relentless. Then he wrote an exposé that nearly uncovered one of Harold's schemes involving state school contracts. And just when Andre was close to publishing, Suddenly a wave of evidence appeared claiming he had been taking bribes. False recordings. False witnesses. His own editor betrayed him. Overnight, he'd been fired, disgraced, blacklisted. Harold had destroyed him thoroughly. He works now, Rosa added, writing ad copy in the basement of that old business plaza near Haven Street. Surviving, not living. I found the place easily. A faded sign reading, Creative Pulse Advertising, flickered above a staircase that smelled of mold and cigarettes. I descended into a cramped, poorly lit room filled with mismatched furniture and dusty computer towers. A man sat hunched over a keyboard, dark circles bruising the skin beneath his eyes. Andre Thorne, I asked. He didn't look up. If you're here for discount ad slogans, come back Monday. I'm here because my father destroyed your life. He froze. Then he looked up, seeing me fully. Recognition flickered, followed by bitterness. You're a Cole. I answered simply. He leaned back in his chair. What do you want, princess? A partner, I said, placing the ledger gently on his desk. He eyed it with skepticism. What is this? My mother documented years of falsified product disposals, off-the-book sales, and, my voice trembled, fake donations with spoiled goods. Hundreds of times. To orphanages. Shelters. He scoffed. Minor fraud. Your father will blame clerks and say you forged the whole thing because of your wedding fiasco. No, I said sharply. Look at the dates. He sighed, flipping lazily through the pages. His eyes barely moved until I pointed to the first pattern. Look here, I said. Then here. Last Friday of every month. He frowned. Flipped again. His expression sharpened. All the biggest disposals happen the same day each month, I explained. The same days he publicly donated food to charities. Cross-check them. He snapped upright, suddenly alive. He grabbed a stack of dusty newspaper archives from a metal cabinet and spread pages across the desk. Headlines glowed back at us. Cole family donates goods to children's home. Cole Foods supports veteran relief. Holiday miracle from Cole and Sons. Every article matched the ledger dates. Every donation corresponded with spoiled inventory, disguised as charity. His face went pale. My God, this isn't tax fraud. This is poisoning the most vulnerable people in the city. He closed the ledger slowly, reverently. I'll help you, he said. We're going to take him down. But before he could reach for his phone, a notification flashed across his screen. Andre stared at it, frozen. Look at this, he murmured, turning the phone toward me. A photo dominated the screen. Ethan and Lila, standing together before the Cole and Sons logo, smiling radiantly. Below it, a headline. Love triumphs. Cole family announces annulment of sham marriage. Betrayed bride invented debt story and jealous rage, sources say. I felt sick. We opened the article. It was venom disguised as journalism. Lila was quoted as a heartbroken, recovering victim. Ethan claimed he and Lila had shared a decade-long love, and my painful jealousy caused a fabricated scene. They painted me as unstable, vindictive, hateful. By morning, the whole city would believe it. Andre read silently, jaw clenched. They're not defending themselves, he said. They're burying you alive. I stared at the glowing screen, feeling my identity dissolving under their lies. I'm not done, I whispered. They think humiliation will stop me. And will it? Andre asked. I shook my head. Not a chance. I returned to Rosa's house that night to find her already seated with her coat on. She'd read the article too. She didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. They will escalate, she finally said. They always do. They'll regret it, I replied. But I didn't yet know how deeply they had underestimated me, nor how much darker the truth would become when I discovered what Lila truly did the night my mother died. And that discovery would transform everything. Rosa waited for me in her dim kitchen, arms folded, eyes sharp with a kind of simmering rage she hid well. The article had already reached her, of course it had. My sister's sob story, Ethan's lies, my father's carefully engineered narrative. The whole city now believed I'd snapped from jealousy and tried to sabotage my own wedding. I had become the villain in a story written by people who had perfected the art of cruelty. They're attacking you from every angle, Rosa said quietly. Which means they're terrified. I sank into the kitchen chair, exhausted. They're faster than I expected. That's Harold, she muttered. His first move is always reputation destruction. Strangers' opinions matter more to him than truth. Her gaze softened. But they made a mistake. What mistake? They underestimated your mother. Her words tightened something in my chest. There's more, isn't there? There always was, Rosa said. Your mother tried to warn you, but she ran out of time. Time. The word echoed inside me all night. Long after Rosa had gone to bed, I lay awake replaying every moment from the past 2 days, every note in my mother's ledger, every uneasy memory from childhood. The next morning I returned to the studio, searching through the place again. There had to be more. I checked books, old magazines, drawers, coat pockets, nothing. The studio remained silent, empty, faithful. I was losing hope when my gaze fell on my mother's old gray coat. It hung on a rusty hook, simple and unassuming. She'd worn it constantly during her last months alive. I slid my hands into the pockets. Nothing. But something about the lining felt strange, slightly thicker, uneven. My heart pounded. I grabbed a kitchen knife, cutting along the seam with trembling hands. A small leather-bound notebook fell into my palm. Her diary. My breath stopped. I sat at the desk, opened it, and the first page hit me like a blow. Her handwriting was delicate but anxious, alive with desperation. August 15th. Harold is furious again. Lila's bills from Miami arrived. He blames the world, but he can't say no to her. He protects her from everything, even her own destruction. I turned to the next page. September 5th. Harold took us to dinner with that young man from logistics. Ethan Ward. The way he watches Lila makes my skin crawl. But tonight Harold kept praising Mira in front of him. He wants Mira to marry him. He wants to sell one daughter to save the other. My hands shook. September 22nd. I overheard Harold and Lila discussing something monstrous. Lila suggested donating spoiled goods for tax write-offs. Children don't know the difference, she laughed. How can my daughter be capable of this? I confronted them, and Harold told me I was imagining things. Lila mocked me. My stomach twisted. October entries were shorter, more frantic. October 10th. I must stop this before they destroy the company, before someone gets hurt. But Harold won't listen. Lila is worse. They don't fear consequences. October 13th. I found my sapphire necklace in Lila's jewelry box. She took it without asking. When I asked why, she said, Ethan likes expensive things. She smiled when she said it, like she knew she would win. My throat closed. And then the final entry. The day my mother died. The handwriting trembled across the page. October 15th. I told Lila and Harold that unless they confessed tonight, I would go to the police tomorrow. I showed them copies from my ledger. Lila said she'd come to my room later so we could talk calmly. She was too calm. I don't trust her. She offered to pick up my heart medication yesterday. I don't know why, but I'm afraid. My eyes blurred. She never wrote another word. Inside the back cover was a crumpled pharmacy receipt. 2 days before my mother died, Lila had picked up her prescription. The list showed her usual medication, but the pills given were not the same brand. A cheaper substitute. Lower dose. Dangerous for someone with a weak heart. There was no proof she changed the medication herself, but the implication was chilling. My mother didn't die naturally, and Lila was involved. I closed the diary with shaking hands. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. The studio felt too small, too tight. I forced myself up and stumbled into the hall, gripping the banister until my knuckles whitened. I had to show Andre. I rushed back to his office. He was scribbling half-hearted ad slogans, cigarette smoke curling around him. When I dropped the diary onto his desk, he looked at me with a jaded smirk until he opened it. His smirk disappeared. He read in silence, page after page, until he reached the final note and the pharmacy receipt tucked beside it. His jaw tightened. He closed the diary slowly, reverently, as though it might shatter. This, he swallowed hard. This isn't fraud anymore. This is murder. The word settled between us like a death sentence. We go to the police, he said suddenly. No, I replied. He blinked. What? They're all in my father's pocket, I said. Police chief, district attorney, everyone. If we hand this over, it will disappear. And we will disappear with it. His shoulders sagged. He knew I was right. Then what do we do? He whispered. We get a confession, I said. Public. Unstoppable. That's impossible, he snapped. Harold and Lila will never incriminate themselves. You forget, I murmured. They panic under pressure. He stared at me. Slowly, a spark lit behind his eyes. You're going to force their hand? Yes, I said. And the city's founders' gala is in 6 days. His eyebrows rose. The one where Harold is receiving the Legacy Award? Where the mayor, the council, the press, every powerful person in the city will be watching? I nodded. Exactly there. He exhaled. We need a distraction and leverage. We already have the leverage, I said softly. My mother gave it to us. But first, I needed something else. I needed to ensure Harold felt threatened enough to make a mistake. So I found Calvin again. This time after dusk, along his usual path through the old Willow Creek Park. He froze when he saw me. Mira, please. I'm not here to accuse you, I said gently. I understand why you stayed loyal. Truly. He looked stunned. I just want you to know I'm not angry, I continued. My mother's diary clarified everything. Her last days, her thoughts, her discoveries. I watched the confusion, and fear spread through him. I intentionally didn't give details. I let him imagine them. She wrote things, I said, that explain why Harold panicked, why everything happened. Calvin swallowed. His eyes darted toward the street. I need to go, he whispered. I know, I said. Good night, Calvin. He left in a near run. By the time I reached Rosa's house, Andre had already texted. He called your father. 1-minute call. Just as you planned. The trap was springing. That same evening, an aggressive knock shook Rosa's front door. She opened it halfway before recoiling. Ethan Ward pushed inside without permission. He looked different now, polished, panicked, jittery. His tie was crooked. His eyes were bloodshot. Mira, he said, voice too bright. We need to talk. Say what you have to say. I answered from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. He set a leather briefcase on the table. Snapped it open. Stacks of cash, thick, crisp, unmistakable. There's $250,000 here, he said. If that's not enough, tell me how much you want. For what? I asked flatly. For your mother's diary, he hissed. Let's stop playing games. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. You take the money. You leave the city. You never bring this up again. And we all walk away clean. I stared at him for a long moment. Then, get out. His face contorted. Mira, be reasonable. I said get out. I repeated calmly. And tell Harold and Lila this. Ethan stilled. I'll see them at the Founders' Gala. He stiffened like I'd punched him. He grabbed the briefcase and fled the house so quickly he nearly tripped down the steps. When the door slammed shut behind him, Rosa exhaled. It's begun, she whispered. She was right. Harold, Lila, and Ethan were spiraling. Everything was lining up. The only thing left was the night that would unravel them completely. The Founders' Gala. The night the truth would finally explode. The Marlowe Metropolitan Hotel glowed like a palace the night of the Founders' Gala. Velvet gowns swept across the marble floors. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above 1,000 whispered conversations. And in the very center of it all stood my father, Harold Cole, basking in admiration as he prepared to receive the Legacy Award. Lila was on his arm, glittering in a gold gown, the sapphire necklace stolen from my mother shining at her throat. Ethan hovered beside them, pale and tense. Rosa and I entered through the main doors. Security moved toward us, but Rosa's icy stare froze them. Andre and Malcolm, the out-of-state journalist, were already seated near the stage, phones ready, cameras hidden in plain sight. Harold stepped up to the microphone. Tonight, he said, voice rich and confident, we celebrate honesty, family, and integrity, values the Cole legacy was built upon. I began walking forward. Gasps rippled across the hall as I moved between the tables. People leaned away, as if truth itself were a contagious disease. Harold continued his speech, but his smile faltered. Lila's fingers dug into his arm. When I reached the foot of the stage, Lila hurried toward me, her eyes wide with panic, her voice sharp. Get out of here, Mira. Don't ruin this. Not again. I looked at the necklace on her neck. Is it comfortable? I asked softly. Mother's sapphires? Or did they feel heavier after you switched her pills? The moment shattered. Lila froze, color draining from her face. The hall went silent. Even the orchestra stopped mid-note. Daddy, she cried out, looking at Harold with wild desperation. Tell them she's lying. Tell them. Harold's expression turned to stone. Into the microphone he said, Security, escort my daughter from the hall. She is unwell. Lila reeled back as if struck. You're abandoning me? Her voice cracked. You told me to do it. The words cut through the silence like a blade. Guests surged forward but kept their distance, forming a trembling circle. Lila backed toward a marble column, tears streaking her face. It was him, she sobbed, pointing at Harold. He said Mom was in the way. He said her heart would fail soon anyway. He told me to help the process. He said no one would ever know. A wave of horrified murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan stepped away from them, hands raised as if surrendering. I didn't know anything, he stammered. I was forced. No one believed him. Harold lunged toward me, not to hurt me, but to grab my mother's diary from my hand. Lila, in her panic, shoved him. He stumbled, hitting the column behind him. Cameras flashed. Andre's phone recorded everything. Police officers pushed through the crowd, responding to Andre's earlier alert. Harold Cole, an officer announced, you are under arrest for conspiracy and suspected involvement in murder. Lila Cole, you are under arrest for homicide. Ethan Ward, you are under arrest for complicity and large-scale fraud. Handcuffs clicked. The hall that once celebrated the Cole legacy now watched its downfall with morbid awe. Harold stared ahead, blank. Lila screamed as she was pulled away. Ethan muttered frantic pleas. The cameras caught it all. By morning, the city would know the truth. 6 months later, I stood on the loading dock outside what was once Cole and Sons Foods. After court trials and convictions, after public apologies from officials who had once sided against me, the business had been legally placed into my hands. I renamed it Evelyn's Provisions, after my mother. Our first shipment, real, honest goods, rolled onto trucks bound for the same orphanage my father once poisoned with spoiled donations. Rosa stood beside me, her hand warm on my shoulder. Your mother would be proud, she whispered. I watched the trucks leave, sunlight catching on their silver sides. My war was over. My life was beginning. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Before you go, tell me in the comments what you would have done in Myra's place, and don't forget to like and subscribe so more people can discover stories like this.